Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we are doing a season preview for the VCT Americas League for the team NRG. NRG last year was a team mostly comprised of previous members of the Optic 2022 roster. That Optic roster did do extremely well. They won a tournament in Masters Rank Vig in 2022, and then they made it all the way to champs in grand finals against Loud, but they did lose. So going into the 2023 VCT season with Optic not making it to the franchise league, not becoming a partnered team, this roster opted to move to a different organization in NRG. At least most of them. Ye and Marv were missing from the roster. It was Victor, Crashes, and FNS joining this organization, with the addition of Som and Artist to that roster. Artist mainly being the Jet Opping player, also played a bit of Sage, while Som was a Smokes player. So in terms of looking at that roster like it was a new version of the Optic roster, the replacements that they had for those two players, Ye and Marv, they definitely could have been worse. Artist definitely had some inconsistencies throughout the year, just kind of seemed like he wasn't really in his element. He moved over from Europe. He's not with the team that he was on previously with FPX. They all moved to Na'Vi. He has now reunited with that roster. Som started out a bit rough, but definitely got much more comfortable and played a lot better as the year went along. But unfortunately for that 2023 team, they did not win a tournament throughout the entire year. They didn't have bad placements, but they had some disappointing results overall. Looking first at Lock-in, they placed 5th to 8th. They faced Loud, which is just another series of them facing Loud, which just seems to happen way too often with these players versus the Loud players. Then in Americas, they placed 2nd, also losing to Loud. They did beat Loud during the regular season, and then they played again during the grand finals of that Americas playoffs. They had an inconsistent regular season, but they ended strong, so I believe they came into the playoffs 3rd. And after losing to Evil Geniuses, they did recover and actually did beat Evil Geniuses in those Americas playoffs, and that qualified for them for Tokyo. And at Tokyo, strong performance, but they just didn't get it done. They placed 4th. So the hope was for fans of this team that at Champions they would be able to find their form and not, be as inconsistent as they had seemingly been over the season. But unfortunately, a lackluster performance, losing to Billy, a Chinese team that didn't really go far after beating NRG. They placed 9th to 12th, so disappointing end to the year, and the org decides to go for a rebuild. So overall, it wasn't a bad year for this team. I definitely think that there was a lot more to be had. There were some inconsistencies, some chemistry issues, and even players on the team admitting to that. So with the org deciding to change things up, they didn't opt for a full rebuild. They still kept Crashies and Victor, but every other player was gone. Artist, Som, and FNS are now off the team. Artist wanting to go back to Europe. Som, I believe with Som and FNS, it was like a mutual decision between them and the org. I think they both wanted to take a break. FNS saying that he wanted to, if he was going to play pro, he wanted to basically have a lot of control over the roster construction, which is fair. I mean, he definitely has enough clout to be able to do that. I do see him, once he retires from pro play, maybe he potentially becomes a coach or a general manager for an organization. He's still a very good IGL. I definitely thought that his IGLing was part of the reason why this team went as far as they did, even with the issues that they faced. But unfortunately, sometimes a broken ship is just a broken ship, and they decide to bring in new players. So who are those new players? Well, it's a pretty stacked list. Demon 1, Ethan, and Marv. Demon 1 and Ethan coming over from the World Championship team in Evil Geniuses. Marv coming over from Sentinels. He's now reuniting with Victor and Crashy. So what is kind of interesting is that, last year's roster was seen as the same Optic roster, just with 2 players swapped out, and now this roster is essentially the same because we have Victor, Crashies, and Marv who were part of that roster. So it is kind of funny how that worked out. Championships won by the org, not the players. The organization itself, 0 so far. For their 2023 MVP, I picked Victor. I do think he was the most consistent player throughout the year. I thought he performed very well, and he was able to play a lot of different agents and do well on all of them. But you can also make an argument for Crashies, FNS as well. Artist too, even though I think Artist was just way too inconsistent on this team to be considered that MVP. I went with Victor. I don't know if that's a controversial take, but who knows. Moving on to the 2023 stats of all of these players, looking at how they did at just the base face value stats. Victor had 1,075 kills, 999 deaths, 419 assists for key to ratio of 1.08. In terms of characters he played KO, Sky, Killjoy, Neon, and Raze. Victor's very good at being flexible. He's able to play Initiator, Sentinel, and he played Duelist a lot. He's really good on Duelist. He's a good Neon player, even though Neon isn't really that, good in the meta right now. He's good on Raze as well if you need him to fill that Duelist role. So I do think Victor absolutely can elevate his game even more than what he has already. How good can Victor be on a team that is consistently putting up really good results? They had an inconsistent year, so that might have hurt his numbers a little bit. So if this team does very well, I do expect Victor's numbers to be very good. Moving on to Crashies, because Victor and Crashies are the duo that doesn't seem like they're ever going to break up. He had 1,008 kills, 938 deaths, 576 assists for KD ratio of 1.07. For the characters he played last year, he played Sova, Killjoy, Sage, Skye, and Breach. Just like with Victor, Crashies is very good at playing multiple different roles. We might see him on Gecko a lot this year because I heard that's what he's been playing in scrims, and Gecko seems to be pretty good right now, especially with the Skye nerfs that are coming, which I don't know if I like that decision, but hey, fair enough. Crashy should put up a similar season, and just like with Victor, if this team gets on a roll, I do expect him to be a very big part of it because him and Victor just have really good chemistry together. Moving on to Demon 1, which was absolutely the biggest pickup for most teams. I think the only one that really compares is Leviathan picking up Ass Pass. Last year on Evil Geniuses, the man that saved the season, he had 1,248 kills, 1,001 deaths, 256 assists for KD ratio of 1.24. He played Jet, Brimstone, Killjoy, Chamber, and Astra. So the fascinating thing about Demon 1 and what brings him a lot of value is the fact that he can play Jet very well. He can play that Opping Duelist role extremely well, as good as most of the other players that are considered at the top when you think of those roles. But he's also fantastic when he's playing smokes. You can put him on Brimstone, you can put him on Astra, and he's almost as elite as any other top smokes player. So he was very good with them last year, and even with a little bit of Killjoy in there as well. This man's flexible. So I do have some concern when it comes to Demon 1. I've said it in previous videos, but we've seen players that, are considered best in the world one year, and then the next year they just kind of fall off the map. We've seen it with Ye, even though he was kind of, screwed over with the whole Cloud9 situation. We've seen that with Nats back in 2021, with Tens as well back in 2021. Those two both had not very good years in 2022. So for Demon 1, I do hope that he breaks that cycle. A lot of people consider this guy to be the best player in the world, and his stats from last year definitely say that. I don't believe that personally, just because we've seen players like Aspas, Alphayear, Leo, those players be much more consistent over a longer period of time. But Demon 1, he was a rookie last year, so he absolutely can be that top player, that undisputed best player in the world. A lot of people believe he's already there. So if he keeps up similar numbers, granted, he didn't play every map during the season, so these numbers might be pretty low for him, actually. If he played from the start of the season, he might have had upwards of 1,500 kills. That would be insane. Overall, I do think Demon 1 is going to do very well. We'll see how he fits on the roster, but he's with some, just very talented players. He knows Ethan already. Marv is a fantastic smokes player, and Victor Crashies are veterans within the scene. So this roster with Demon 1 on it, it's definitely improved. Moving on to Ethan, the year he had on Evil Geniuses was quite impressive. I thought that Ethan, he had that run on 100 Thieves that didn't end as well as he probably hoped. He had his run on NRG in 2022, actually. He was previously on this organization, and that team didn't do particularly well. So Ethan having the year that he did on Evil Geniuses definitely raised his stock a lot more because he performed really well. He acted like a leader on that team, a veteran of the scene as well. And he's a very good player. In 2023, he had 1,105 kills, 1,089 deaths, 911 assists for KD ratio of 1.01. He played Breach, Skye, KO, and Yoru. He's a good player. He knows how to play different roles. He is going to be the IGL on this team, so I definitely think that puts a lot of pressure on him, but at the same time, Victor and Crashies and Marv, they all mid-round call. They're all known for that, so this team not really having a pure star IGL, I don't think that affects them as much as it would other teams. Like, think of Sentinels last year. I think part of the reason why they just really couldn't find a good groove was because they didn't have an elite IGL. But with this roster, I really don't see that as too much of a weakness because you have players that call mid-round and do it very well. It's not like players just stay silent, obviously. They're calming, they're communicating, and Victor and Crashies know how to do that very well. So if he can pass that on to Ethan and help him out in that IGL role, plus Chet being a very good coach, So I don't think Ethan's going to have too much of a bad time adjusting to that IGLing because he's done it before and he's with some very experienced players. Moving on to Marv on Sentinels, he had 302 kills, 333 deaths, 154 assists for a KD ratio of 0.90. He was their smokes guy, as he's known for. Brimstone, Viper, and Astra were his agents of choice. So Marv last year, those stats don't look fantastic. I mean, you don't look at smokes players to put up a lot of kills to have high KD ratios. But he did perform well overall on a Sentinels roster that was just struggling, and I do think he did everything he could to help that roster. I don't think he was expecting to play. I remember, before he signed with Sentinels, he was saying that he was just going to lay back and just chill for the year, and then he signs as the sixth man, probably thinking, oh, I'm just not going to play, and I'm going to get paid to do nothing, essentially, while being on this org that's going to give me, clout with, streaming and give me, new audience and whatnot. And then all of a sudden he's running the team and being the IGL. So not the best spot to be put in, honestly. So I do commend him on his ability to try to turn that team around, and he did do overall pretty good, but unfortunately just didn't end the way the org wanted it to. But hey, that's just how it goes. Now he's back with players that he's familiar with, and he should improve his play based off of that. Overall, this team absolutely looks stacked. This definitely has to be, on paper, one of the top 3 rosters in the entire Americas. All these players are very good. Victor and Crashy's consistently very good performance. Demon 1, the best player in the world last year. Ethan, a solid depth player. And Marv, an amazing smokes player. So I don't think they're going to have too much trouble when it comes to roles. There is a lot of initiators in these character lists, so we'll see how the Sentinel role kind of shakes out, but I don't see Crashies or Victor having any trouble with that role if they are set to play it, plus Ethan can probably play it as well. And with double smokes comps, they have Marv and Demon 1, who are 2 fantastic smokes players, so I don't think they're going to have any trouble adapting to comps, and I think chemistry-wise, they already have experience with each other, as I said, at least a lot of them. Plus, Chet is a very good coach, as I've already stated, so overall, this roster looks fantastic. They haven't had a lot of time to practice, though. This is a newly formed roster because of the contract jail that Demon 1 and Ethan were in. So if they're going to find the rhythm and make it to Madrid, they're going to have to do it quick. Moving on to their maps in 2023, starting with their best maps. Haven, they had a 9-2 record on attack was 59%, defense was 56%. Bind, they had a 5-3 record on attack was 53%, defense was 52%. So this team was one of the best teams on Bind last year. They had a very good strategy for Bind, a very good comp on Bind, but they did start to lose on that map to the tail end of the year, losing on that map in some of the bigger moments such as Loud in the Americas playoffs, but overall they were very good on that map. For their worst maps, we have Ascent with a 3-4 record on attack was 42%, defense was 55%, Fracture 1-3 record with an attack win percentage of 62%, so that's pretty good, but a bad defense win percentage in 37%. So they don't have to worry about Fracture anymore, but they also don't have Haven anymore, so this map pool might not be very beneficial for them, but at the same time, this is a different roster from last year. There are only 2 players remaining from that roster, so these map stats maybe not be super relevant to this current roster. So overall, what do I think? I think this roster is very good. I think they're extremely talented. They have all the talent in the world. Their IGLing is, I think, the only main question we have, but as I said, with Victor and Crashies being very good min-round callers, I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem. Overall, if this team doesn't at least qualify for an international tournament and go on a good run during it, it's going to be seen as a failure, because with how this team looks on paper, they look fantastic. But again, they haven't had a ton of time to practice, so that might be their Achilles heel early in the season. So it wouldn't be too out of the ordinary if they miss Madrid. But with this talent, they should be able to overcome that and qualify for that tournament. But with only 2 teams being able to qualify for that tournament, we're going to see a lot of good teams drop out. So NRG is going to hope that they're not one of those teams. And in terms of winning an international tournament, they definitely can do it. They have the talent to do it. But the stars have to align. They have to prove that they can beat some of the top teams in other regions first. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you think this team is elite? Do you think Demon 1 follows up his rookie season with a fantastic sophomore season? Do you think Victor and Crashies continue to be consistent and very good? Does Ethan struggle as IGL? Does Marv struggle on smokes and, just doesn't find his 2022 form again? Or does this team just go on an insane run and beat everybody? Click like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.